They steal your freedom in the dark. When I was a boy, it was the Nazis. Then the Russians and their secret police. They always seem to come for you in the dark. Maybe that's why I love sunrises so much. The light feels good. Freedom feels good. I came to America more than 50 years ago, on the run and scared. My name is Joseph Holler, but everyone here calls me Farmer Joe.
I was a little boy in Hungary, growing up on a farm. We owned a farm, and my whole family worked on the farm. And everything was doing good until 1934, when the war, Second World War, started. The Nazis came over to our home and put us all in one room, 7 of us. I have a brother and 3 sisters and mom and dad. And they put us in one room, and they took our big dining room over, all the high officers, and they had maps. We had table similar to this here, and that's where they planned the war, on our dining room table. They were there for quite some time, and we have to live in that one room, 7 of us, 3, 4 of us sleep in one bed, and this is the way it was until they get notice to leave, to go ahead, because the war was coming. The Russian was pushing Hungarians and Polish and Czechoslovakians were fighting together against the Russians. And then in the meantime, my dad had a pair of beautiful registered Lipizzaner horses, and those were drafted to the army. And my dad had to take him and cried all the way to the railroad station to put the horses on. My mom was German. She spoke German. And my mom would go over the keyhole and listen what they're talking about. And of course, they were all inside, and nobody would know somebody's listening, like my mom. And the report came back, and they said, well, one guy says he used bazooka, and he got 3 tanks that day. He blew up 3 tanks. And someone else come in there, he shot so many other people, and they were reporting. And this is the way my mom interpreted it to us. The Jews get a letter in our town. My dad was up to date on politics, and he told us at the house that the Jews get a letter that they're going to have to leave our town and go to a railroad station, and they could carry 25 pounds per person of weight. And so, and the Jews were collected, they were picked up in every town, and they had to walk to a railroad station, which was about 10 miles, 12 miles to the 10, 12 miles to the railroad station. All had to leave, everybody. And I was picking pumpkins as a kid. We had a pumpkin patch close to the highway. It was a brand new highway built right behind our house, only about a quarter mile, that's it. And it allowed the Jews to run into the pumpkin field to grab a pumpkin to eat. So they were eating pumpkins. They were so hungry and skinny. Some of them walked a long distance. The railroad was far away. So, and they went on the railroad station, and they took him, and they told them that they are going to their promised land. They're going to go to Jerusalem. That's what they were told. That's where they're going. So they took them all, and then the rest, we all know what they did to them. Poor people. I had two good friends, young kids that went to school with, because the Jewish kids went to a Catholic school in Hungary, in my town. And I missed those kids, you know. After that, they never heard anything from the Jews after that. A couple of years, the Jews were gone. They sold their houses or gave them away, but everything was destroyed and given away of the Jews. And 2 years later, one of the Jews came back, and my dad went to an auction in Hungary for the Jews' furniture and everything they had. They auctioned them off, and my dad bought a grandfather clock from his best friend, Jew. And my mom was angry. Why did you buy the clock? I wouldn't buy anything, she says, because you know what they done to these people. I don't want to remember them buying their stuff. And my dad said, I bought that clock because that was my best friend. When I look at that clock, I look at him. We had a root cellar made out of concrete. My grandpa and my dad made that root cellar. We could put a lot of vegetables in there, tons of it. And my dad was in there all the time. He was very much afraid. And I heard so much gunshots that I came out of the root cellar, and I saw people running around the house, and soldiers, Hungarian soldiers, German soldiers, and Russians were, I could see the Russians probably a quarter mile away. That's how close it was. And I stood next to a pear tree and just watched what's going on. And I was so curious. And all of a sudden, I hear prrrr, machine gun, and the bark of the tree was flying right off, right next to me. I ran across the street, and I ran in the house there to our neighbor's house. And in the meantime, several team of horses coming to our house, because that's where the colonels and everybody were. And I noticed our horses was in a war, and our horses were the first team. And they ran so hard, the man who was holding the horses, he could not hold the horses. The gate was closed, and our horses ran right through the gate and right into the front of the barn where they always lived. And I came back from my neighbor, kind of quieted down for a minute, and I looked in the wagon, and I saw all kinds of machine guns, rifles, hand grenades, all kinds of explosives was in, and colonel uniform was in that. And what I did, I grabbed the hat and I hid it in the cellar. I took the harnesses off the horses and I went upstairs in a hayloft. I buried the harnesses so they can't take our horses. The kid, that's what my mind was working on, to keep our horses. After that, I see people running from a castle up, down to our home, and they were falling down. And they were shot, and they were killed. And so, then the Russians were right there at our house. They saw the hat in the root cellar, and they thought we hiding Germans in the cellar. So they were taking them out with a rope. They were going to hang my dad. I ran across the street because a lady, the two families lived in the house, and one family, wife of the guy, she spoke Russian. So I told her to run, and help my dad. I put the hat in there from a wagon, see? But she told them, and so they didn't hang my dad. My dad was Snow White, poor guy. But that's because of me, because I liked that hat. My dad prepared us for the war, and my sister, older sister, she was 13 years old, and he made her dress up in boys' clothes and put shoe polish all over her face because Dad knew a lot about the war, because they were raped women. And my mom was dressed in all kinds of old raggedy clothes. And also, my next door neighbors have 3 daughters, down to 10 years of age. They were all raped by dozens of Russian soldiers, dozens. And that went on for several weeks before they were stopped by that Russian-speaking woman next door. She was told to talk to one of the colonels, Russian colonels, what's going on, and the Russian colonel went up and told them, "You stay away from these girls or I'll shoot you all." I was only 9 years old.
Wieder Arbeit gegeben wird, wie sie es verdient haben.
I was only 9 years old.
Völker wollen den Frieden.
I was only 9 years old. I think a lot of harm to me. I was very scared after the machine gun was aimed at me, and the bug was flying right off of that beautiful tree, pear tree. And what bothered me the most is the people falling down. And I had an idea what happened, at the time. That why would they fall down? After everything quieted down, next day we have to go and check all those people on our farm. We had several on our farm dead, and we had to bury those people. And my dad asked me to check those people's pocket. And I was afraid because there's blood all over them, bullet holes everywhere in the body. There were machine guns used on those people. Before we put them in the grave, I had to check the pocket, what I find for information. My dad took those names and we marked the graves where we buried them. Little boy named by Frankie. And he and I used to play together whenever we had a chance. And one afternoon, Frankie comes by the house and he says, "Joe, I found a big, huge bullet." He called it a bullet. It was a cannon, unexploded cannon was on the ground. "Why don't we go and take it apart?" See? And my dad gave me a chore. I had to clean the barn, the horse barn, and the cow barn, take the manure out, and put bedding in. That was my chore. And I said, I can't go because I couldn't finish my chore before Dad comes home for the horses. And so I'm not going to be able to go with you today. So Frank said, "Well, I'm going to go," and he left. And about an hour later, I heard a big explosion, and it was about at least a mile away, my house. That's where he found that big bullet. And another hour goes by, and my cousin next door came home from the woods. He was working in the woods, and he says he heard an explosion, and he see body parts all over the trees. So find out my little Frankie, like my brother to me, he exploded with that. He set it off and it blew up, and they only could pick up pieces of him. After the Russians settled in and they were living in our country, a large percentage of them lived in our country. I don't know exactly how many, but we had Russian stations and all kinds of Russian this, Russian that. And also they called collective farms. They come to my dad, and two men came to the house, and the dad said, "What can I do for you?" "Well, we want you to sign the papers here." And he says, "What's on the paper?" "Oh, I'm not telling. You don't need to know what's on the paper." All right? And he said, "I have to read it. We're not going to sign anything." And he threw the paper on the ground. And he says, "Get out of here. I'm not signing anything." And they replied, "They will be back and they're going to fix you." I was on a border guard at 19 years of age. And they decided, the people who were there before me, to escape to Austria, because we see the Russians coming, the Russian tanks by the hundreds were coming at us, and we had nothing to fight with other than I had 6 bullets for my rifle. That's all I had, and it's all we had is 6 bullets. So we can't fight the Russians. So we had to get away and save our lives and save other people's lives.
At some point, there was a plan hatched to open the border, and to do this, they decided to tie up the hands of their commanding officers and march them at gunpoint across the border. And this they eventually did. And in doing so, it left a swath of the Austrian-Hungarian border open, and eventually Russian tanks rolled into that area. But before they did, and because the border was open, there were at least hundreds of people in the fields that were hidden, and they were waiting for a chance to cross the border. And when this happened, miraculously, many of the Hungarians escaped through that into Austria. After escaping through the border, the Hungarian soldiers, including Joe, was thrown into an Austrian prison because they suspected with the Hungarian uniform he was a Russian spy or he was a communist. And so he was in prison in Austria for at least 3 months. And one of the stories he told us that they made him wash the cell floor with a toothbrush quite often to occupy his time. So he decided to go to the United States, and this is what he did. They sailed past the Statue of Liberty. They had no idea. Unfortunately, none of the Hungarians knew about the Statue of Liberty. He's always said he wished he had known about that. The Catholic Church was there to help these people that had escaped, and because Joe was a Catholic, they gave him funds so that he could make the trip to America. Now you have to remember, when Joe was in Austria, the whole time he was in prison, his parents, his family that he was so close to, had no idea where he was. The revolution was going on. They knew there were battles and so forth. People were dying and the soldiers were dying. So they had no idea where Joe was. When he finally made contact with them, he was at Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. And there in the camp, the Red Cross was there to help. The U.S. government was feeding them, giving them used clothes. He had a brown shoe and a black shoe that didn't fit, and he's short, and the coat was down to his ankles, but he had clothing. They were kind.
Joe Holler eventually settled in Reading, Massachusetts. His sponsors, Margaret and Kelsey Moore, a prosperous New England couple with 2 daughters. There, Joe learned to speak English and with the help of his new family, find work and earn a living. He'd also meet his future wife and partner, Marge, and in 1964, the two would wed, with the Moore family, who Joe now affectionately called Mom and Dad, in attendance. Joe's Hungarian family was overjoyed to learn their soldier son had survived the Russian purge in the days following the short-lived Hungarian Revolution. Years later, Joe would host his birth parents on their first trip to the United States, their first trip anywhere for that matter. They'd brag, no doubt, that their son Joe had become a successful American farmer, one of a new breed of Americans who dreamed big, who knew firsthand how essential freedom is to the human spirit, because for a while, they had had it stolen from them.